High school sports fans, it's time to huddle. Fox 26 sports reporter Gabe Camarillo covers all you need to know on this week's Friday Night Rivals game and other games around the Central Valley. The U.S. Army's Friday Night Rivals podcast on Fox 26 kicks off right now.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Night Rivals podcast brought to you by the U.S. Army. Did you know that you could serve part-time in the U.S. Army? Reserve soldiers serve 1 weekend a month and a 2-week training event each year. In the Army Reserve, you can serve in your home, keep your civilian job, use tuition assistance, and more. To learn more, visit goarmy.com. This week's FNR game is Washington Union at Torres. To preview the matchup and his Toros, who are defending Division IV Central Section champions, I have head coach Joe Marquez. Coach Marquez, how you doing?
I'm doing well today, Gabe. Thank you.
All right, so let me know, what's the reason you tell everybody when they ask you how you won a Central Section title in just 3 years of varsity football?
I tell them straight up, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of I feel like it was 3 years of work and, almost no vacation in between those three. And, it was a grind the entire time with the kids putting in a lot of work and coaches putting in a lot of work. And it was just, it was nonstop. And I'm really glad it paid off.
Matilda Torres High School was opened at the start of this new decade, 2020. Your first varsity football season was 21, correct?
That's correct.
So, was it a dream for you to be able to build this football program from scratch?
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of scary at first. It was a new endeavor that I had never taken on and never really thought about. Even when you get into coaching, you don't think about starting a program from absolute scratch because it doesn't happen very often. Schools don't open every year. And so it was a great opportunity, and it was something that we kind of jumped into head first, and we took it by the horns and went for it.
And when you say started from scratch, like what did the first practice look like? What did the first team meeting look like?
Well, the first practice was in the middle of COVID. So it was about as bare bones as you can imagine. It was a bunch of kids running around in shorts and tennis shoes with no equipment, and us trying to figure out how to practice plan and figure out what we could do and what we couldn't do, and how to teach these guys. And these guys hadn't played a lot of football because of COVID, so it was definitely an adventure.
I have to wonder now, how different does it feel going from practicing in non-football attire to practicing in a $31 million state-of-the-art facility that is Toro Stadium now?
Yeah, it's completely different. It's not the same at all. It's almost like we're at a next level, a higher level institution here, and we have everything you could ever need to put on a football practice and a game, as you can imagine. And we get to walk into our facilities where there's a fitness room, a weight room, a training center. All of our equipment is stored on site, and it's all right there for us when we walk in. It's amazing.
Tell me how that first game was last week to face Madera High School on that field. Did it, feel like a big game? Did it look like one of the best high school stadiums in the Valley? Because I wasn't there, but you were there, so you tell me.
Well, I didn't really get to see the stadium and what it looked like, to be honest. I was kind of in the middle on the field. I always try to take in a little bit from each game, walking in and out from the pregame and halftime and whatnot. And it was a packed house, and it seemed like a great atmosphere. It was one of the best that I've been around for sure. Our facilities and our field are absolutely gorgeous. So seeing what I did get to see looked really good. It looks good on film, I'll say that. And so, it was a great atmosphere, though. I think, probably half the city of Madera was here. So it was really nice.
And I'm sure that stadium will be filled again this coming Friday when Friday Night Rivals broadcasts Washington Union at Torres. We're here with Toro head coach Joe Marquez. And Coach Marquez, I want to hear more about this year's team. What type of championship experience is back from those D4 title winners last year? And then where are their new pieces?
Well, it's funny you ask, Gabe. Not a lot is back. We graduated a lot of seniors last year,
yeah.
But the guys that we did bring back are they are experienced, as you said. They know what it takes to play at an extreme level, and they're teaching the young guys how to play Toro football, which is great for us. It's just starting over again from scratch almost, with so many guys missing. And as I said, though, the guys that did return, I think we have I think we have 6 guys who actually played in the Valley Championship game who were starting on the team this year.
Well, hey, you're used to building things, right? You built a program from nothing to a section champion, right? But what's the most important part when you're rebuilding something and you're kind of reteaching those sophomores and juniors what last year's seniors already knew?
For us, it's keeping the culture that we've established. I'm very big on culture, and I believe that if that is set in stone, and the older guys can teach the younger guys, then you don't miss too much of a step. And I think that's the hardest thing to build when building a football program, because you talent varies year from year, and sometimes you have guys that are just amazing, and sometimes you have guys that are developing, and it depends on where you're at in that. But if your culture stays the same, it keeps you even keeled and balanced, and then the expectations that we put onto the kids are never lost. And so it kind of it speeds up that learning curve.
And I imagine because the first thing you answered when I said, what's the reason you guys won so quickly, you said right away, hard work. I'm imagining that's probably like the cornerstone of the culture you're trying to build at Matilda Torres.
Definitely, it goes a lot with hard work. You can make up for a lot of mistakes. You can make up for a lot of missteps with your work ethic. And in high school football, that is something that needs to be at the forefront of what you're doing. And so, I tell the kids all the time, you can make as many mistakes as you need to get caught up and learn what you need to learn. But if you make those mistakes at full speed, nobody's ever going to be disappointed in you. And so we try to get them going full speed from the beginning. We try to make our practices as intense as possible. We try to get these guys going full speed in the classroom, doing the right things at home, doing the right things on and off campus, and hopefully all of that translates into the young men that they need to be.
So I also know that the Torres football identity is physical play, which kind of goes into that hard work, right? You get hard work in the weight room that translates to being able to push people around in the line of scrimmage. That's your team identity, right? Or am I mistaking it?
That's been us for the last 3 years, and we're trying to get back to that point. As I said, we got some younger guys. We got some extremely young guys on the defensive side of the ball, and they're trying to get caught up to that varsity speed and the varsity contact level. And it seems like they're coming around a little bit, so it's good.
I know Washington Union also might have something similar up their sleeve, right? More of like a physical ground and pound approach with their running back Vega. What else can you tell me about Washington Union from what the film shows and from what you saw last 2 years when you played them?
Well, historically, they've been a very physical football team. So they're one of the teams that always match up very well with us, and they can go pound for pound with us, without problems. So with them and us, it kind of always just comes down to who's playing better football at the time, and who's going to make less mistakes. The turnover battle is always huge. On film, they look like a very athletic team. I know they got some really good players over there, and it's going to be a challenge for us to be able to match up with them speed and athleticism wise.
Well, I know for sure that new guy, Rashad Perry, transfer from Edison, he's already putting up some like crazy highlight plays. I saw something on Twitter where he stopped in the middle of a play, like on his tracks, like Lamar Jackson did a couple years ago, and made a tackle look silly. When you're playing against athleticism, how do you try and, control that and keep them from making too many explosive plays?
You have to have good fundamentals, and you have to have 11 people running to the ball. Rashad's the type of player that if he's one-on-one with somebody, he's probably going to win that matchup most of the time. So you need to be able to rely on your teammates and know that people are coming to help you out to make that tackle.
And that's going to be a key X factor is tackling in this game. But for you as the head coach of Torres football, team coming off 2 losses, where do you want to see growth in this team on Friday to try and get your first win?
We need to play better football. And that's what I told the team this week. I'm looking at a lot of the mistakes that we make on film, and it's just we're not playing the quality of football that has been accustomed to Torres football right now. And so we're really focusing on the fundamentals, the basics, and trying to do things the right way here, and just putting out a quality product on the field. So we need to minimize our own mistakes and go from there.
Well, Coach Marquez, I appreciate your time. I said the X factor for me is tackling. What's the X factor for you in this game? Washington Union Torres on the CW 59 at 7:30 on Friday.
I think for us, it's playing with maximum effort, fanatical effort. If we can do that, we'll have a good game.
I've heard that term before, fanatical ever. That's like a Fresno State term, and it makes sense for Coach Marquez to say it. He's from Edison High School. He's from the Valley, so of course a Fresno State fan, I imagine as well.
Yeah, I am a Fresno State man, and I've coached with a lot of Fresno State people as well, players and coaches.
All right, he is Coach Marquez from Torres High School. Thank you, Coach.
Yep, thanks, Gabe.
Before I go through the games for week 3, just want to let you know that with over 150 jobs available, learn the skills you need to be all you can be during a career in the U.S. Army or Army Reserve. Visit the Army's online career explorer at goarmy.com to learn more. With that out of the way, thank you to Coach Marquez for his time. Again, Washington Union versus Torres is the FNR game, but we'll go through the rest from around the Central Valley right now. Here we go, talking about the games from around the Central Valley in week 3. You might notice I have glasses now if you're watching on YouTube. I need to get contacts at some point because I do need to eventually get rid of these things, my glasses. Probably didn't come here to hear about my vision, but you did come here to hear what I see in week 3 of Central Valley football. Looking at Thursday games, Golden West is going to be making the trip to Tulare, taking on Mission Oak. Golden West coming off a big win over Dinuba. They beat them 63-8. Jaden Nahara had 5 touchdown passes in that win over the Emperors, and Golden West needed that after having a tough double overtime loss to Arroyo Grande. And by the way, I know I mentioned this last week. That's a good loss. So Golden West 1-1, but I have a lot of respect for the Trailblazers. And Mission Oak, on the other hand, Golden West has an experienced quarterback, whereas Mission Oak is starting a freshman in Royal Cox. But I think Royal has a really bright future. The Mission Oak Hawks are 1-1, coming off a shutout defeat on the coast of San Luis Obispo. So that's something these teams have in common. Not only coming from Tulare County, but also going to the coast and losing some tough games. If you're Mission Oak, it's a rebuilding year. You graduated all those seniors that led you to the state championship game. This should be close, but I have Golden West by an edge. Another Thursday game, Ridgeview from Bakersfield driving up the 99 to face the Sunnyside Wildcats, who are red hot on offense, and then that defense kind of gets overshadowed a bit, but that defense is also a big reason why they're looking so dominant. Tanner Wilson plays both. He had a lot of tackles in that week 1 win over Madera. And then, another big performance from the quarterback against Reedley. Overall in the season, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions for Tanner Wilson, and 12 yards to carry. He's throwing it to C.J. Jones like we thought he would. Of course, those guys are best friends off the field, so it shows on the field. Jones with 4 touchdown catches so far, and a great receiver duo. Malachi Barnes is another name to know. Dante Hart had a couple big catches down the stretch in that first half against Reedley. So I feel like this is a good Sunnyside team. They should beat Ridgeview, who doesn't have a strong offense themselves. I think Sunnyside should be able to win a shootout if it comes to that. But that defense for the Wildcats, I'm not lying, it is pretty good. Friday games, Atascadero traveling to Sunnyside Stadium to take on the Roosevelt Rough Riders. Roosevelt got their first win of the Ricky McCoy era a couple weeks ago. They beat Corcoran 28-14. Name to know for the Rough Riders, Dominic Gonzalez. They're running back, but also can catch out of the backfield. He should have a big game against Atascadero. Looking at other games, Edison, they will be traveling to Veterans Memorial Stadium to take on Buchanan. Edison trying to shake off that loss to Clovis and the loss to Bakersfield, where they haven't scored a point yet, but they've given up a lot. I think the key for Edison is, can you just win a half, or can you at least get some small victories to eventually add up later to the season to a big one? I don't see that coming this week. Buchanan, they showed a lot in that opening win over St. Pius X, St. Matthias, and I have Buchanan as a 2-0 team. I feel like they're going to go 3-0 just because of the skill players there. Carvel Wafer is a name to know. I'm a big fan of the quarterback, Josh Madrigal. He's looking strong. The transfer from Bullitt a couple seasons ago. He didn't play last year, but he's playing this season. He hasn't skipped a beat for Buchanan. So a lot of reasons to like the Bears in that matchup. Bullard, they're going to take on Hoover at McLean Stadium, reigniting the Battle of Barstow. That used to be a really hot rivalry back in the day. Don't see it being a close game. And you know what? Bullard hasn't had many close games, to be honest with you, in this early season. They won 70-3 one week. They're winning by all these wide margins. 35-0 was another final score. after a half, right? That was the season opener against Golden Valley and Merced. It doesn't matter who they're playing at this point. It looks like they're putting up a lot of points. Some stats to know. Tyler Franklin averaging about 300 passing yards a game, just short of that, but he's almost there. 9 touchdown throws for him. The transfer receivers are stepping up. You got Washington Union import, Davian Potts, Sunnyside transfer, Tyron Pree. These are athletic playmakers for Franklin. And then the running game is key to this all because, Franklin only can have these big games if there's a running game to keep the defense honest. And sure enough, the quarterback is picked up by his running back, Devin Laney, who took a year off football, but since his return, 12 yards a carry for Devin Laney and the Bullet Knights, as I said, taking on the Hoover Patriots out of McLean for the 7 p.m. kickoff Friday. Dos Palos at Liberty Madera. These are two of the better small schools in the North Valley. Dos Palos coming off that tough loss to Chowchilla, 41-21. That's a tough pill to swallow because, that's kind of it is a rivalry back in the day, but it hasn't really left Dos Palos yet, that rivalry. So that hurts to lose to a rival. And then also you keep this in mind as well. They just won the West Side War over Los Banos. They wanted to beat rivals back-to-back weeks, but they lost by 20 to a really good offense, right? That could be, for Dos Palos, a problem. Those athletic playmakers that Chowchilla had last week, your Travis Selby's, your Davian Stevensons, the Tribe are loaded in that category of athleticism. And I feel like teams like that could give Dos Palos problems. Can Liberty Madera present that? We'll see. They're 0-2, but they have close losses to Strathmore, Mendota. These games are in the 20s. This is more of a defensive-minded team that Coach Nolte has. So we'll see what Liberty Madera can do against Dos Palos' quarterback duo. I feel like that is going to be a really close game. Lindsay is on the road to Exeter. Exeter, young team. They're trying to pick up the pieces from a lot of graduations, and I feel like that could be an Exeter team that grows as the season goes along. Fireball at Carruthers. Carruthers 0-2, looking for some spark. They'll be at home against the Fireball Eagles, who had a close battle with Fowler. I was really impressed with their effort against Fowler. It was a 1-point loss for the Fireball Eagles, but maybe they're not in the business of moral victories. I think this is a moral victory for them to be that close with one of the better teams in the Northwest Sequoia League. Gives them a lot of confidence as they will prep for their West Sierra League action. Sanger West will be at aforementioned Fowler, just down Fowler Avenue. I used to live in that area. Sanger West is literally probably 8 minutes max from Fowler Stadium, and I'm sure Jared Bubba Smith is going to have a big game in that one. But Sanger West, they're one of the more under-the-radar teams. You don't really hear about them as much, but they're working hard. I'm a big fan of what Rob Thompson is doing with the Hornets. It takes a while to build a program. And we'll talk about building a program later on with a different game. But hold that thought. Hanford at St. Joseph. We just saw the Bullpups beat a good Sanger team, therefore proving that they are really good and maybe even in the conversation for Division I AA. Someone asked me earlier this week, Gabe, if you're base D2, does that mean you don't have to be put in that top bracket, the 8-team Division I AA? Do you get to stay in Division 1A? No. You go to Division I AA if you're the top 8, regardless of your base Division II status, right? It's just to keep the 9 through 16 teams, really the 9 through 12 in this current format, because we've only had 12-team Division I brackets, but 9 through 12 have not been competitive in the playoffs so far. That's why they have Division 1A. There hasn't been a problem yet, keyword yet, of the top 8 games not being competitive, right? The quarterfinals, semifinals, those have been closer. But I feel like Hanford can really stay in Division I AA. Remind me a lot of Sanger from last year. Remember Sanger last year? They almost beat Clovis East on the road in the playoffs. That team had size up front, had Division I skill players, and, had that leader on offense. Sanger had Izzy Robles as the leader on offense, and Bryson Baker, too. Hanford has Daniel Gomez, Corday Glass, J.C. Turner, Perryman. I can go on and on, right? Hanford is totally capable of beating a Division I AA team in the playoffs. They got the experience as well, right? They played against Clovis West last year in the Division I playoffs. So they may not want to hear it. They may want to be in Division 1A or D2, but I think just like Sanger last year, they probably belong in that Division I AA just based off of the talent level. That game against Kennedy, they proved that they can last 4 quarters against a Division III opponent. That game against Sanger proved that they can last 4 quarters and outgun, out everything a Division II opponent. And not only that, but Division II contender in Sanger. So I think Hanford, if you're upset about being in Division I AA, I would get over it, because I think you have a chance to actually make some noise in that bracket. And I think they'll prove it again when they drive 2.5 hours, long bus ride, but I'm sure it'll be a happy ride home when they beat St. Joseph of Santa Maria. Went longer on that game than I thought. Here, let's keep it going. Kerman versus Garza at Collegian Stadium. Kerman Lions led by another under-the-radar guy. I talked about being under the radar for Sanger West. Under the radar in terms of Kerman, quarterback Adrian Torres, completing 74% of his passes this year. Really good stuff by Adrian, and we saw his accuracy on display when we showed you the highlights on Fox 26 last week. That win over Carruthers. Dominant one, 42-0. Then the way they beat Torres week 1, I have confidence that they can do something similar this week against Garza. Kingsburg will be at Dinuba. Dinuba is 0-2, trying to get their first win of the season. But Kingsburg's going to be really amped up after that loss to Clovis East. And Kingsburg, I was talking about this with a coach earlier this week. It doesn't matter who they graduate. You don't really worry about that, because they always seem to retool and reload every year. There's always a new playmaker stepping up, and I feel like that kind of thing's going to happen this year. They're totally in the mix for a Tri-County Conference title. Dinuba trying to get ready for a very tough West Yosemite League. All right, keep it going. El Diamante will be at Lemoore. Speaking of the West Yosemite League, Lemoore had a close game against Washington Union last week. Let's see if they can, kind of get out of that habit of being in close games. I think El Diamante is a team that they could beat soundly, but we'll see. That's why they play the game, right? El Diamante, I got to say, they are on the right track, but based off Lemoore's past history and their size, I think Lemoore wins the battle of the trenches with quarterback Aiden McDaniel. They got an experienced guy under center. It's just, can we see new guys out wide on the perimeter and a new guy in the backfield that can consistently be a bell cow and consistently produce? That's the big question for Lemoore, because Washington Union, they were able to get some stops on them. Lemoore only won 30-25, a game that they've won in the past by as much as 56. There's a year Lemoore beat Union by 64-8. And now, it's getting closer. The gap's getting closer between Lemoore and the teams in that Division II, Division III bracket, like El Diamante. All right, keeping it going. McLean at Mendota. I'm a really big fan of the McLean Highlanders. Noah Zamora. He is a dude, a very, very veteran guy, I would say. He makes the right decisions. He went through the fire last year, his first year on varsity as a quarterback. Now, I think he and all the other guys around him, your Desir Newhouses, your Demetrius Simons, right? And if I'm forgetting anybody, please forgive me. It's just there's a lot of guys on McLean that I think give them the athletic advantage over most opponents. They have that advantage on the road at Mendota. Reedley at Orosi. I saw the Reedley Pirates last week. I saw them actually both weeks of the season. I think they'll get better as the year goes on. Another younger team, but there is some senior talent to bank on defense. And so I feel like that game at Orosi should be, a Pirate win. Porterville versus Selma. How about this? 2-0 teams going head-to-head. They both wear orange. Porterville, once again, has a strong defense. Selma, hey, they're 2-0. How about that for Art Francis in his first season? And they're kind of winning these close games, which is always something you love to see, right? 29-26 over Cabrillo. They won the next game by a wider margin. I feel like the Selma Bears, if they can score on Porterville right out of the gate and get that confidence going, especially this game being on the road for the Bears, that could be huge, and them potentially being 3-0. This is a really close pick-em type matchup. Sierra Pacific will be hosting Corcoran at the Neighbor Bowl on Friday. They're 0-2. To get that first win, they got to stop Julian Fernandez, the star Corcoran tight end. I saw this guy on the basketball court almost win a section title. I didn't know he was a two-sport standout, and when I was looking at the stats on Max Preps, apparently he is the top red zone target. He's caught 5 touchdown passes, and there's only been 5 touchdown passes for the Panthers this season. So if Sierra Pacific wants to get that first win, they have to stop Julian Fernandez, especially when Corcoran is driving deep into SP territory. All right, going on. We have a few more. Then we got our top 5 games of week 3. Washington Union at Torres. We just talked about this game actually with Joe Marquez. Going to come down to Torres overcoming their youth and beating a Washington Union team that has a lot of senior stars, guys like Rashad Perry and Paul Holland. And I think this team at Washington Union is one of the better ones that Paul Holland, senior head coach, has had at Easton. So going to be tough for Torres. They got a tough schedule, but then after this, they got North Yosemite League play. And then a couple more before we get to the top 5 games. Clovis West will be visiting Edison of Stockton. They play 3 Edison teams this year. They already beat Edison and Huntington Beach. That was an exciting 2-point conversion for the win. And then they got Edison of Stockton on the road before facing Edison of Fresno next week. Edison has a tough slate if you think about it. They go from playing Clovis to Buchanan to Clovis West. Doesn't help them at all, right? San Joaquin Memorial taking on Castaic in Valencia. Rich Tooman got his first win as Memorial head coach last week. Congrats to you, Coach Tooman. Now, can he make it a 2-1 record for the Panthers? That's an easy drive almost, right? A little bit past Bakersfield, just on the other side of the grapevine. I'm sure that they'll be ready for that game. Talking about Memorial. All right, here we go. Top 5 games of week 3. Number 5, Central at Turlock. All right, so here is something that I told you about the Grizzlies at the very start of the season. They're going to be just as good this season as they were last season, despite losing David Marquez, despite losing other really big contributors like Noe Felix. The depth on this team has always been outstanding, and that's why there's never a rebuilding season for Coach Kyle Biggs. Just on to the next, right? On to the next crop of receivers that are playing really good. Guys like E.J. Morgan, Zeb White, Dalen Scott, and the new name to know, a sophomore who leads the Grizzlies in receiving yards, Bayon Harris. And Jelani Dipple is lucky to have all these guys around him because here he is making his first couple starts at the varsity level, and he's not looking half bad, right? Now, he has 8 touchdowns to 3 turnovers. I think that's huge to look at because the last Central starting quarterback was really good with the football, didn't turn it over that much. And I feel like if you're a Coach Biggs quarterback, you need to be able to take care of the football. That's going to be huge in this game on the road against Turlock. Turlock's not a pushover. If Central wins big, it's impressive. So keep that in mind if you see the final score on Friday. Number 4 game in the Central Valley is actually outside the Valley, but Clovis North taking on Jay Serra of San Juan Capistrano. This was a huge game last year when Jay Serra was ranked top 10 in the state. Clovis North controlled that from the opening kickoff to the final whistle. In fact, they almost shut out Jay Serra, if not for a late touchdown. It's going to be about that defense. Ross Sinfeld leads the team in tackles. He has the most tackles for loss with 3, and his brother Jackson Sinfeld, you know him, he runs the ball well. So does McKay Madsen. It's going to be about, can Clovis North do what they did last year? Play their signature brand of football. Don't get cute and start throwing the ball all over the place. Stick your fingers in the dirt if you're the O-line. And McKay and Jackson, if they get 15 carries apiece and you give Tyree Sams a couple end arounds and runs on the perimeter, and then you eventually surprise them with the play action, because that's what made Clovis North so good last year, was that play action pass game and the run game to boot. There's just a lot of ways that Broncos beat you with their brand of football. They'll outmuscle you. They'll give, a lot of different looks on defense. Their defense is outstanding. They got to win this game 24-17 to be able to go back home 3-0. I feel like if it gets into a shootout, if they get into any shootout this year, are they equipped to win a game like that? We'll find out maybe on Friday. Number 3 game, Tulare Union taking on the Redwood Rangers. Mineral King Bowl never looked so good for the Rangers, who are finally there after 2 road games. They went to Bakersfield, then they went to Clovis to take on the North Broncos, and finally they're home and facing a rival. I mean, maybe not a rival in the history books, but this team has put together some big battles with the Rangers the last couple years. I mean, last year, Redwood was able to lead with a 42-35 win over Tulare Union, but the Tribe looked really good with that plethora of talent they have there. Rashawn Hayes, the running back, taking over for Tyler Peterson. They haven't skipped a beat on the ground, with Hayes averaging about 11 to 12 touches a game, and he's averaging over 100 yards per game. And that only helps Jordan Crisp, who a year older, a year better. His arm has always been strong, and he's able to get those deep connections with Braden Stevenson. Stevenson is the star on this team, I think, when they talk about non-quarterbacks. He has 350 yards of offense between running the ball and catching the ball. And I haven't even mentioned the other guys, DeMaje Riley, for instance, right? There's a lot to like about Tulare Union. I say that about a lot of teams, sure, but Tulare really is in that short list of Division II title contenders. For them, the only question would be, right, can they stop another team on defense? I've seen it happening in years past. I mean, in games past as well, but Redwood's going to give it to Jimmy Burke. They're going to have a decent passing game with Luke Sanchez, who just gets better with every game. I think Luke, he ran into a tough defense last week in North. He ran into a tough defense in Centennial that first week of the season. If Luke has a good game, I think Redwood could totally win this. But it truly is, like the other game I mentioned earlier, a pick'em. It really is a pick'em. This one is closer than a lot of other ones on the slate. Clovis East and Sanger is the number 2 matchup. These teams play each other every year in the battle for the Silver Spear. And with East, I say a lot of things about their offense because the offense is good. But the defense has blocked 3 punts. Well, I guess that's special teams. I think about like fantasy football, defense, special teams in one category. Blocked 3 punts. They got multiple guys who are, leading the team in tackles. Josh Wilson, Jax Kuntz, O'Shea Webb, the Edison transfer, has an interception, returned it 47 yards. The defense is doing its part. They're the reason why Kingsburg only scored 6 points. The reason why they held a really good West of Utah team to just 21 the entire night. And I think that's why they'll win this game against Sanger. The Apaches, they're going to throw the ball. They have a good quarterback in Arian Ciano. They got a good receiver group in Jacob Niemeyer and Bryson Baker. Baker's probably going to go to a Division I school here soon. He's going to make that announcement sometime this fall. I just feel like Clovis East has more of those stars on the perimeter. They'll break more explosive plays. They'll have those big chunk yardage plays, and I think that's going to be the key X factor here. Because we saw Hanford able to get those kind of plays against Sanger last week. I think Clovis East can get those too. Number 1 game, Frontier at Clovis. Frontier at Bakersfield. Everyone's talking about them like they're the best team from Kern County. Well, we'll see if one of Clovis teams can beat those Titans. I feel like it's about one simple matchup in Clovis Frontier. Frontier's defensive line and Clovis's offensive line. Frontier has 12 sacks in the first 2 weeks of the season, and they're playing against out-of-town teams like Liberty of Palmdale and Oak Ridge. I'm imagining those are big kids in Sacramento and SoCal. So imagine them going up against Clovis's guys. Can Clovis stop them better than the other guys did, the Sacramento and SoCal kids? I think if you're a Cougar fan, you'd like to think so. I think they've given Deegan Rose a chance to throw the ball a bit. There's been a lot of different guys catching passes for Clovis, from Desdar Malone to James Rose to the leading receiver, the running back, Maddox Merrill. His stat lines make him look like a mini version of Christian McCaffrey almost. They're putting a lot on Merrill's plate. And I feel like if Merrill has a good game against that defensive front, it's going to help Rose a lot in the passing game. It'll keep the defense honest. It'll stop the pass rush. So I guess it kind of goes twofold. Can Clovis run the ball effectively? And thereby, can they protect Rose enough so that way he can do his thing? Because Deegan Rose will be the best player on the field on Friday night at La Monica Stadium. Or I guess I should say Tim Simons Field at La Monica Stadium now. It's going to be a great night. Frontier, as I said, best team in Kern County, but can one of the Clovis teams beat them? That's the top game and the top storyline of Week 3 of Central Section Football. I went on for 23 minutes, a new record in our FNR podcast, which is brought to you by the U.S. Army. We'll try and talk longer next week. Have a good time watching the games, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate the U.S. Army's support in bringing you Friday Night Rivals High School Football.